welcome. My name is Robin Smart. I'm one of the public education coordinators with the Alzheimer's Society Waterloo Wellington. I'm really glad that you've joined us on our YouTube channel today. We have lots of information here for you. Today's talk is on the 3 R's, and I'm not talking reading, writing, and arithmetic. The 3 R's in dementia care refer to recognize, reassure, and redirect. It's a great little tool for supporting people who live with dementia when they're feeling stressed. So why don't we start by looking at what is dementia? When we talk about dementia, it's actually not a disease itself. It's a set of symptoms that accompany a wide variety of different diseases. When somebody is said to be experiencing dementia, they will have changes in memory, language, judgment, reasoning, ability to perform daily tasks, and changes in personality and behavior that tend to worsen over time. You can have Alzheimer's disease, and you can have dementia and not have Alzheimer's disease. And I want you to know, even though we're the Alzheimer's Society, you should come and see us for any type of dementia at all. As a matter of fact, let's look at some of the most common types of dementia that we can support here at the Alzheimer's Society. Everybody's heard of Alzheimer's disease. It tends to start with memory loss, tends to strike more women than men. But if you have memory loss alone, that's not Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is much more complicated than that. There's also something called FTD, or frontotemporal dementias. And those dementias tend to start with changes in language and reasoning and behavior, and not so much with memory. They often strike under the age of 65. And if you have anything in the FTD family, please come and see us at the Alzheimer's Society. There's also something called Lewy body dementia. Looks a bit like a cross between Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. So there are fluctuations in cognition. There are changes in movement with Parkinsonian symptoms, slowness, rigidity, tremor. And people who have Lewy body disease tend to have vivid visual hallucinations. There's also vascular dementia, very, very common, second most common type that there is. And it can come from a major stroke or a series of small transient ischemic attacks or mini strokes. It can also come from any vessel disease that affects the brain. So when the blood flow to the brain is interrupted, you get vascular changes. You can have more than one type at a time. They call that mixed. Common mix is Alzheimer's and vascular, but you can certainly have Lewy body and Alzheimer's. And you can have dementia under the age of 65. Any type of dementia that's diagnosed under the age 65 is called young onset. So any type of dementia, we're your go-to place. So what do we know about the dementias? What I'm going to tell you today applies to any of the dementias, any types. We know that emotion remains throughout the disease process. We know that the ability to control emotion is damaged. It's as if your volume dial on emotions gets stuck and you can't dial it back down again. We know that how people express emotions can change. Sometimes they have flat affect and can't show emotion on their faces. Sometimes emotions bubble up and burst out very quickly, very suddenly, and very intensely. These changes come from chemical changes in the brain, and I'm going to talk about those in just a minute, as well as the deterioration of the neurons, the brain cells themselves. And the reason that we need to know about this is that people in a high emotional state, a very stressed state, are often difficult for us to calm down. And so we want to teach you some techniques that might help you de-stress somebody when they're upset. So the neurotransmitter changes that occur in a brain is that there's a reduction in acetylcholine, so you get memory impairment and confusion. Norepinephrine, potential for depression when there's less of that. Your serotonin decreases, so that usually leads to depression, restlessness, anxiety, agitation, potentially aggression, reduction in dopamine, therefore a reduced memory capacity, and a reduction in glutamate, and that's where you can get some psychotic symptoms. So there are many opportunities for people living with dementia to feel stressed when this is going on. Now, when you or I feel stressed, we have some coping mechanisms. But people living with dementia actually have fewer coping mechanisms as their brain experiences these changes. So, what I want to do is I want to show you what we call the hand model of the brain. So I want you to pretend that my arm is a brain stem and my hand is a brain. My thumb is going to be the amygdala. That's way down in the center of the brain. It's often referred to as the emotional center of the brain. And your amygdala is responsible for fight, flight, freeze. It's always turned on. My fingers are going to represent the cortex, the thinking part of the brain. This is where the damage to the brain is occurring. And so your amygdala is basically spared, but the cortex, the thinking part of the brain, is getting damaged. So if your amygdala that feels emotions is constantly on and it's firing and firing and firing, and the thinking part of the brain is becoming more and more damaged and less able to contain those emotions, what can happen is you can flip your lid, so to speak. The emotions can burst out. So when people are living with dementia, their baseline for frustration tends to be a little higher than somebody with a healthy brain. So they start off at baseline, but then they often become quite anxious. And if we can intervene when they're feeling anxious, we can maybe diffuse a situation. If we don't see that, if we miss that, if we're not in the room or we don't catch it for some reason, they might escalate a bit and go to verbal anxiety. They might become loud. They might become upset. And if we miss that verbal, where either they're very loud or maybe they're crying, if we miss that, they might even move into physical manifestation of anxiety. They might start pushing and pacing and moving against folks. And we want to intervene early. As soon as we see somebody getting anxious, we never want them to get up to the point that they are stressed to the max, because it's very hard for people living with dementia to diffuse themselves. They lack the same capacity for rational self-talk and self-soothing. So we want to help bring them down. And the best way we know to do that is something called the 3 R's. So here they are. Now, the 3 R's have to be done in a certain order. It really won't work well if we mix the order up. So number 1 stands for recognize. That's the first R. And it's to recognize the emotion. Whatever it is, you want to name that emotion. Oh, I can see you're so sad. Or I can see you're very upset. Or I can tell you're angry. You want to name the emotion. You've got to recognize that emotion. The next R is for reassure. People living with dementia just have a higher anxiety level. It comes part and parcel with the disease process. So reassurance is huge in helping to diffuse situations. And they might need a lot more reassurance than they ever needed in the past, or you might think that they need. And then the last R stands for redirect. We want to help them to find something that's pleasurable for them to do. If we jump to redirection, like, hey, let's go get an ice cream, or hey, how would you like to look at this nice picture, when they're still upset, it won't be a very successful strategy. So what we want to do is start by recognizing, and I'm going to give you a few examples. I can see that you're really angry. I know you're frustrated. I understand you are. And then you fill in whatever the right word is for the circumstance. When it comes to reassurance, again, you're going to have to pick and choose what's right in the moment. But here are some ideas. I will check. I will find out. I love you. I'm here. We can do this together. You know your person best. You'll know what reassurance will work for them best. But please don't skip this step. It's very important. And then you can go to redirection. Maybe you need to stall them. Maybe you say, oh, well, let's have a bite first. Maybe you say, well, how about we and then fill in something that they like. Why don't we go put the fire on and I'll play some music? Why don't we go outside and check the bird feeder? Maybe it needs to be filled. It's time to, and fill in the blank. Always try to pick something that's going to be of interest or importance to the person. You cannot distract somebody with something that isn't meaningful to them. So those are the 3 R's. You want to recognize, reassure, and redirect. And they really work very well with something called validation. So validation does not involve agreeing or disagreeing or what is true and untrue. It involves listening, really listening and demonstrating that you understand what's important to the person without adding your own reality. Because there's a great definition of dementia, that dementia is a shift in the way a person experiences the world around them. That's by Dr. Alan Power. And if you see reality one way and they see reality another way, validation doesn't try to correct them. So when you're validating somebody, you want to try to name the feelings that you hear or you see or observing. You want to paraphrase their comments. You can try mirroring their expression. You can use touch if that seems okay. Because for the person, it's not about the facts, it's about expressing their feelings and having those feelings acknowledged. So let's think of an example. Somebody saying, I want to go home, and they're saying it with sadness in their voice. When you go to respond, a few things to think about. Try to be aware of your body language. If you're just listening to them and you're kind of looking around and you've crossed your arms, or you're twiddling away, you're looking at your chipped nail polish or something like that, they will not, even though your ears are turned on, they will not believe your ears are turned on. You do want to make eye contact, not a staring contest, but you do want to make eye contact with people. Say, you seem sad. And I can see that home is very important to you. Tell me about home. Fill in whatever the right word is. Maybe home's not the right example in this case, or whatever case you are finding yourself in. And again, use soothing touch if that's appropriate. So validation, it allows you to respond to what the person is feeling in the moment and to support their emotions. And it's done through your attention and your conversation. Now, one way that we can support you in supporting people living with dementia is through our programs and services. And I want you to know that these programs and services are offered at no charge, so everybody can access them. And we welcome everybody to our door. We welcome people of any age, gender identity and expression, race, color, or sexual orientation. So don't hesitate. You can pick up a phone, whatever kind of phone you use. You can email us, because we offer supportive counseling. We have a wide variety of education sessions. We have social and recreational program. We have services that can help you if you're concerned about somebody going missing. We can offer exercise opportunities. We have a YouTube channel, and you found your way to it already. And we have support groups. And those are just some of our services. So I invite you to look at the next slide with our contact information. And please don't hesitate to be in touch with us. We look forward to hearing from you. We're here to help. Thank you.